Hi everyone, I was doing a video with Kodak working on place-to-place recall today, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity, especially with some of the things going on in this session, to give you some tips and tricks when you're working on the beginning of place, and how to kind of progress working on place to duration. So a little bit of background, Kodak has been started with clicker training. So that is how we introduced place and recall. So to begin with, all we did was as soon as all 4 paws hit the cot, we would click and reward. And then once he understood placement and go to here, then we started rewarding sit and down. So we've never asked for sit or down. We just started rewarding if he sat or went into a down. So here what we're doing is, number one, we're building some duration and some distance with place, and we're also breaking that up with some recall, since he's a dog that just wants to follow you around when you're working on a session. So recall can be a little difficult if you can't get the dog to leave you. So this is one of the ways that we are able to work on recall. So here what's happening is, obviously I send him to place, I'll reward a sit or a down, and then once he stays there and I'm able to walk away, then I recall him. So in a minute here, what you're gonna see is, there he goes into a down, so I click and reward. In a minute, what you're gonna see is when I walk away, he wants to pop off of place. So when you have a dog that is not wanting to stick to place, you could see I walk back and forth instead of just stopping to recall him, to give him a chance to fix it. And then if he does fix it, I'm going to reward that. So a lot of owners struggle when they get to this stage, because they're like, well, we're still teaching it, so we're not going to correct at this stage, since he's just learning, hey, we want you to stay on place. So anytime he does get off, I'm still going to mark the behavior with no, just a verbal no, and then I'm going to right now use my body to kind of push him back onto place. So you can see when he pops off, I simply just walk back over and he backs up on place. So I'm still marking the behavior with no, telling him that, hey, that's incorrect. But there's no correction. I'm just, so you see it there. I can just step towards him and then he backs back up on place. So one of the things to remember at this stage, he goes to the other cot, that's completely fine. I just call him over and put him back on, is that you're not going to reward him for fixing the behavior. So when I say that, when he gets back onto place, he doesn't get that click and reward like he normally does when I originally sent him there. He's fixing the behavior that he did incorrectly. So I'm still going to verbally tell him good, but there's no reward to fixing what mistake he made. So what happens a lot of times is owners will be like, well, he fixed the behavior, so since he fixed it, I'm going to reward him. What's happening there is you're actually rewarding the dog's mistake. Yes, he fixed it. He needed your help. That's all totally fine. I don't want to say we encourage mistakes, but mistakes need to happen in the learning process to be able to learn. So if you start rewarding him for fixing it, he starts to learn, if I just get off and back on, I get another reward. So the only rewards he's getting right now is for the correct behaviors that he's offering. So here, he popped off. That's totally fine. It was marked with no. I guided him back on and then walked away again. There was no reward for fixing the mistake. But later in this session, what I start to do is when he makes a mistake, I guide him back. And then once I walk away and he successfully stays there, I'm going to go back and reward him for staying there. So I'm not going to reward him for fixing the issue. I'm going to reward him for staying in command. So here he stayed. I just recalled him. There's a reward for doing the recall correctly. And then I send him to place. I'm waiting him out right here. I'm not rewarding for just getting on the cot at this stage, because he already knows he needs to start going into a down. So I just wait. I didn't say anything. I just waited until he went into a down and then rewarded him. So then I walked away again. He pops off. I help him out. Again, I said no. Went back and just used my body language to push him back on. He makes another mistake. All of these things are totally, totally fine. Again, we're in the beginning stages of learning, so there's going to be a lot of popping on and off. Again, that's totally fine. If it's a chronic issue and he really can't get a hold of it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start decreasing the distance. But earlier in this session, he was being successful a good 90% of the time. So I'm not going to take that step back right now. I need to start building that distance. I'm just going to help him out and put him back on over and over and over again. Again, that's totally, totally fine at this stage. He's learning. So what we're doing here in this session is we're rewarding the progress. So when I say that, we're not rewarding his mistakes, but we're going to start breaking it down. So he popped back off. I put him back on. We're going to start breaking it down. When he's successful, I'm going to start going back and rewarding. So a lot of times, like I said, this stage in training can be very frustrating because they're making so many mistakes because we're building duration, we're building distance. So here you see he stayed on, he fixed his mistake without my help. So I went back and rewarded him. And then, of course, the piece of food dropped in the hole of the cot leg. So we kind of had to fix that. You can see him start to sniff that. Mistakes happen in training. It's all part of it. So I go back and help him out and get that piece of food out of that leg for him. It's important to note that earlier in this week, he was absolutely terrified of the cot and just getting on and off of it. So being able to have him on it and actually shake the cot is absolutely huge for him as far as a confidence building aspect. But again, there he stayed on the cot, so I went back and rewarded him. He popped off. That's totally fine. I put him back. He still thinks there's food somewhere. Helped him out with the leash. He's got tons of personality. So again, here, since he was successful, then I'm going to go ahead and recall him. So I went and got food out of the bowl. That was enough of a distraction that he popped off again. Helped him out. Again, no reward after he fixes his mistake. I'm going to reward him once he's successful and I can walk away. Then I'm going to walk back and reward him. But you don't want to keep rewarding the mistakes, otherwise you're going to keep getting the mistakes. So then I went ahead and recalled him since he did well with that. And then back to the other cot. So in the other sessions, we had just worked on place by itself. So there wasn't another place cot. We weren't working on recall. We were only working on place. And with that session, I was able to get some nice distance and duration. But when you start to add things together, this is very, very common to see this many mistakes. And this is where a lot of owners get frustrated because they're like, well, he understands it in this context, but when you change things, they're going to make mistakes, and they're not purposely making this mistake. It's just the fact that they're learning, and when you add new things, it does get confusing. So you have to break it down a little further and be willing to reward these little tiny bits of progress. Like I said, he stood up. He didn't get off the cot in this situation. So he stood up. I didn't have to say anything. He thought through it, and then he laid back down. So that is what I'm rewarding in this situation. They're allowed to get up on the cot. They're allowed to move around. The only thing that we're asking at this stage is that they stay on the cot. So when he makes little decisions like, okay, I'm going to get up, and then he thinks through it and lays back down, I'm going to reward that. That's not a mistake. That's him thinking through things. Getting off the cot, that portion of things I'm not going to reward. So he pops off again. We put him back. No reward for this. He does great with the recall portion of this. It's just part of what we're after. Since he's struggling, I'm going to go back and reward the fact that I was able to walk away and he stayed there. And that mistake after that, that's perfectly fine. Just put him back. And you could start to see that he starts to settle a little bit. He puts his head down, which is fantastic. All of those things are positives. He's, just overly excited at certain stages of this lesson. Again, go back and reward the progress there. We want to teach the dogs how to think through things for themselves, which is why I'm pointing out these little decisions that he's making that are positive. That way you can catch those little instances and start to reward those. But a lot of the mistakes I'm seeing with private lessons and the owners working their dogs is that they're rewarding mistakes. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the end of this lesson and show you a little bit of the progress that he's made. So this is just about at the end of the session. So it's about 10 minutes after that first clip that I showed you guys. And at this stage, he's finally, getting the idea of what we're wanting. And the reason for that is, again, we're rewarding the progress and the good decisions that he's making. So if he stands up on place and lays back down, we're going to reward that. Little tiny decisions where you can see him start to connect those dots, that's what we're rewarding. And at the end of this session, it finally clicks. He's sticking to place. He's not struggling so much. And again, I'm still going back and I'm rewarding those good decisions. I'm not going to lose that at this stage. Just because he's being successful, I want him to continue to be successful. So I'm still rewarding those little things. And you can see how much of a difference that makes. Again, that was only maybe 10 minutes at the most. I think it was more around 7 minutes from the first clip to this. It's all the same session. You guys didn't need to sit there and watch, another 7 minutes of this. But just rewarding those little decisions makes this much of a difference where he's not hopping off when I don't want him to. And we haven't made a single correction in this session. He's still in the learning process. But just giving him that little extra bit of help, rewarding the good decisions, this is the difference that it makes. Obviously later on, once he has a firm grasp on everything, then we're going to start correcting non-compliance. But at this stage, it's not bratty decisions that he's making. It's just a lack of understanding. Well, we're going to recall in a second. So, if we're going to recall in a second, why don't I just, beat her to the punch and go ahead and go to her now? It's a lack of understanding at that stage. Look at that decision. So he decided to start to get up, and then he thought through it and laid back down. That's a massive decision for him to start making at this point. Again, he's still in the learning stage. So we want to emphasize, yeah, that was an awesome decision. You did lay back down. Again, he stood back up. I don't remember what he does here. We'll watch for a second. Yep. So he stood up, and again, he laid back down. And so he chose not to get off the cot. You can see him thinking about wanting to get off the cot, but he made that decision not to. So the whole point of this video is to show you guys that, first of all, don't reward the mistakes. If he gets off, make him fix the mistakes. So, as soon as he gets off, you're going to mark with a verbal no. And when I say mark with a verbal no, you're going to mark with, no, just like I'm talking right now. You're not going to yell it. It's not going to be in a harsh voice. It's just information. Here he chose to go ahead and go to the cot. I'm not going to correct that. I'm just going to call him back to me, and then send him back to place. But with no, I don't want that to have a harsh tone. We're just giving him information. So no matter what the situation is, my no's are always going to be just a soft no, like I'm talking to you. So it's information. That was not correct. No, here's how you fix it. And then later on, it's the same thing. No, you did something incorrect. There's going to be a correction when it's a decision that he knowingly made. Right now, he's in the learning process, so these little decisions to get off the cot and stuff like that, that's not, it's not him being bratty, it's just the learning process.